And we're back, people. We are back, your favorite. And I wasn't lying in the last year, and I damn sure I ain't lying in the new year. Your favorite sports podcast from the airways, Rolling with Ramos, is back. I happen to be the one that holds the last name Ramos. I like to specifically thank my daddy for that one. Mike Ramos, always wear you on a shirt, and I always love you in heaven. The crazy thing about the new year is that it brings about new horizons, but it also lets me know it's another year without you being here. You would have loved to hear about this one. I hope you see it. Episode 106. 106 of them things. That's a long thing to say. 106 of them things. Right. Episode 106. I kept it simple. The 2021 edition. And not to be out and not to be forgotten, because he does so much on this show. You hear my voice. He's trying to tell me, believe in the brand. You are the brand. I'm speaking French and we. He's always speaking Kobe and Mikkel. It's you, it's I. Tristan, you are the star. Another year, baby. Welcome back.
It's another year. Happy New Year to everybody watching. Happy New Year to you, Mikkel. Happy New Year to our special guest who we're going to introduce in a second. Very excited to get on about this. A lot has taken place just in this week alone. And it's going to be a crazy weekend as well. So I'm excited to get into it.
Well, you know, one thing I'm sure you're probably not mad about is the fact that you're outnumbered today.
You know, I'm never upset.
Do you really care?
I'm never upset. Never upset. You know, Tristan loves when the women are taking over. It's all good for me.
Well, you see the face on the screen. You know who she is. She's the contributing writer for The Atlantic, host of Spotify podcast Jemele Hill's Unbothered. She also co-hosts a show with the great Carrie Champion. Hi, Carrie, how you doing? On Vice TV, it's called Carrie and Jemele Stick to Sports. Like, we're not going to do that. But anyways, there also was a show, a little video show, you know, called Sports Center on the 6 that was at 6. It was called His and Hers. Shout out to Michael Smith right on. Jemele Hill, Happy New Year. I'm glad you answered the call. And you're here.
Of course. Why would I not want to roll with Ramos? Thank you both for having me on. Happy New Year to both of you. And, you know, as I tell people, as I've said, Happy New Year, we have nowhere to go but up.
Indeed.
In some ways, it feels like 2020 just said, hey, 2021, let me show you the ropes around here. Let's keep this going. Hopefully we get a stop to this somewhere.
Hopefully.
Because this has been a crazy year. Jemele. A lot of people have watched you for years. I personally would like to say, I can't sit here if there's no you and there's not the work that you've done over the course of the years in the background. So for that, I'm forever grateful. A lot of people have watched your journey in sports broadcasting. They've grown up to you. Your success has been amazing to see. You're one of the gems of this field. If you can assess and speak to your own success, what do you feel like are the contributing factors that allow you to become and remain one of the most prominent figures in sports journalism? Everybody wants to know the secret. Do you have any advice?
Well, you are way too kind by giving me any credit whatsoever. If there is, you know, I do think that, you know, while there are models that we can look to that are aspirational and people that we feel like that when we see them succeed, that it gives us maybe a little bit of boost or an encouragement and we feel like we could do the same. I certainly understand that part, but you're very talented in your own right. That has nothing to do with me. But if you got anything from any bit of my journey, that is very humbling, you know, for me. And so I accept the praise and I thank you for that because that's very meaningful for me. As for my success, you know, I think whenever I'm asked about how to characterize my success, there is a temptation for people to believe it's something that just happens like lightning, that it just strikes and boom, there's a bunch of success. But the boring part about success is that it's very much a grind and it is a process and it is repetition and it is doing things, particularly things you don't want to do over and over again until, as they say, preparation meets opportunity. And for me, you know, of course, a prayerful foundation. I had a very praying mama. that was a good piece and component of my success. You know, ambition, drive, all those things are very important. But I think, you know, when I think about a couple of things that really kind of allow me to separate a little bit from the pack, it's just that I just wasn't really going to let a lot of people outwork me. I may not have been the best writer. I may not have been the best on TV. There's a lot of things that I may not have been the exception or exceptional in those regard, but I tell you what, I was going to always try to control the things that I can control. And the things I could control is working the hardest and doing little things, showing up on time, being professional, you know, being courteous to people, extending a helping hand to those who may have needed a leg or a bump up. Because I really do believe, and I'm not saying this is the reason you should do good things, but I do believe that there is something that happens when you are in this more to be of service than to be served. And because I've always kind of had that mentality, I think that is why certain doors have opened, certain people have been maybe more gracious with me and more helpful to me than they would have been with others. But you got to be in this for something bigger than yourself. And that isn't to say that having individual goals or individual success is something that you should shy away from. No, the individual success is definitely, it definitely should be at the forefront and an important goal, but it has to be something bigger. And the something bigger for me was to tell stories, was to represent a perspective of my people that wasn't out there. You know, my people being both Black people and Black women, both sets of people. And, you know, also, I think when you look around media and see where there are very obvious holes in how we're discussed, covered, how our stories are framed, how our narratives are shaped, there's very, very clearly an issue in media in terms of representation. And so all of those reasons combined with the fact that I wanted to make sure that I didn't just open the door for other Black women and other Black girls to come through it. I wanted to not only get in the room, I needed to change the room, because being let in the door, I mean, I think there's, while a lot of us still have yet to be let through that door, a lot of us have gotten in. And what's happened is something, for a lot of different reasons, we don't change the room when we're in there. You got to change the room. Sometimes you got to blow up the room, because that's the only way we have tremendous disruption and culture change in our business. So apologize for the long-winded answer, but those are just sort of some of the things that I kind of have in mind when I think about, you know, what my success means.
I'm going to ask you to add to that, because we're all a part of the National Association for Black Journalists organization. And when you talk about creating a narrative and blowing up the room, what does those type of organizations do as far as helping us be confident in doing something like that? Hopefully we get a chance to go to Houston as well, because we need it.
Yeah, I mean, I think considering how tough 2020 was, I mean, it would feel good to be with some of my NABJ brothers and sisters and just for us to fellowship. But, you know, the thing about, you mentioned a very key trigger word, confidence. And when I joined NABJ and realized I joined when I was 16 years old, I was a junior in high school when I joined the organization, which is about 1992, way long time ago. And so when I joined, the thing that immediately was a jolt to my system that was injected into my veins was being able to look in a vast conference room, or a vast conference space, I should say, and see thousands of people who look like me, who had the same goal that I had, and who were making their way into business the same way that I wanted to. Because, you know, being Black in America, for the most part, even if you live in a Black city like Baltimore or where I'm from, Detroit, it is an isolating existence. And it's isolating because once we start to professionally climb, we find ourselves in so many rooms where we are the only, we are the first, we are going to fit, or one of the few. We're going to fit in one of those three categories for a huge percentage of our professional lives. So we need the reinforcement of seeing groups of us doing the same thing. We need that, because it's a treacherous field that we're in. And sometimes it feels more than just good. Sometimes it just changes our spirit to be able to relate and commune with other people who are going the same thing. So the confidence is important. The other part of it is learning how to work the system. That is another key thing that I think NABJ teaches you, knowing what you have to do if you want to be successful. Grinding for internships, getting your foot in at that first job, making connections. I mean, yes, this is a business where talent certainly rises, but as we all know, it is a who you know business. And NABJ puts you in connection and in contact with people you need to know. Wesley Lowery, who's a great reporter for the Washington Post, he said this. We were on a panel together years ago, and I never forgot it, and it stuck with me. The thing about journalism that's so tricky is that this is not an academic pursuit. Even though a bunch of us have degrees, we've gone to school for this and that kind of thing. This is actually a job of mechanics. It's actually a trade. It is not necessarily an academic pursuit. And by that, I mean that with a trade, that most of the people who have a trade that you knew that became a mechanic or, a repairman or an electrician, they get good by doing. That's how we get good. We get good by doing. It's unique to a lot of different professions. Like you only know you're going to be a great radio host or a great podcast host if you actually try to do it, and you get better at it the more you do it. So much like a mechanic, the more cars they work on, the better they get at being a mechanic. And so, with that being said, I think the intricacies of our profession, you need to put yourself in a position to get as many reps as possible. And that's something that NABJ does better than practically any organization that you could join. I mean, I tell people constantly, like, I'm not just trying to sell you on something. It really changed my life, and it changed a lot of people's lives to be involved with NABJ.
And continue that conversation as we're looking at the scope of this country, which we're going to go into next. We also have to let everyone know that HBCUs aren't dead, because if you look at the main people in this country that are making it happen right now, they're coming from an HBCU. Shout out to the Morgan State University. As I say that, right on. Social injustice, anybody paying attention to the last 24 hours in this country, we've been monitoring it. We've been looking at it, images that we never will forget. Me and Tristan are from the DC area. And Tristan, I know as a kid, you remember going downtown and going near all these government fixtures. And if you look at them wrong, they coming from you. And to see people taking ropes and climbing and breaking windows to the U.S. Capitol that we drive by and all the time. You yourself were on site working downtown and had to be closed off for a minute. So much to unpack, so many questions that we already know are answered, so many questions that we're still trying to figure out. But we got to bring this back to sports a little bit, guys. As sports figures and athletes, our voices are told to hush. We're told to shut up and dribble. We're showed that we're only here for entertainment purposes. We have not done that. Our platforms have been primarily used, our games have been primarily used as sources of conversation for what is going on in the world around us. The social plight, injustice plight of the bubble and what was done in the bubble and how magnetizing that was. And me and Tristan heard Mark Spears go into true depth about him saying that's an experience that he'll never forget. And it kind of trumps over anything he's ever done so far in his career that brought him to tears. You couldn't turn on Sports Center. You couldn't see the likes of Malika Andrews and games coming on without this being the conversation first, because athletes had a lot to say about what's going on in DC. Celtics, Miami, kneeling in solidarity pregame. Jemele, even to throw you in this, what you've been through in this country, what they put you through in this country. When we look at all this, and I'm gonna ask you first, Jemele, and Tristan, you can piggyback. When we look at all of this, how do we assess the undeniable power of sports and its sports figures that they have when it comes to continuing the conversation for change and realization, keyword realization in this country? And how has America finally somewhat respected sports in this position, or do we still got a long way to go?
Whether or not America respects it, I don't really think matters, because these athletes are going to keep forging ahead, and they're not asking for permission anymore. I think that we went through a period where they were, a period where they would rather not be engaged and involved in these issues because they thought that there would be some financial penalty that they would have to pay, or that it would somehow limit their earnings potential and their fandom. And some people just didn't want the headache, period, because it's not easy, as in this space. You start voicing your opinion on matters of racism and white supremacy and social injustice, and that's going to bring you a different kind of attention. And a lot of people aren't equipped to handle that attention, or simply don't want it because it is such a headache. With that being said, it's funny is that even though I saw what Draymond Green had to say about the rioters in DC, and he was dead on, and leave it to Draymond to say it how it needs to be said and not how we would like him to say it.
Right.
And that I appreciate it. However, the most meaningful thing that athletes have done in the last year is what happened in Georgia. And maybe by 1A, I'll let you pick which one was more significant. It's the presidential election, and it's what happened in Georgia. That's when you saw the power of a platform. But I'm going to say Georgia between those two, because, and I don't even think this is talked about enough, and even though I say this as I'm writing a column about it, but when the WNBA players, when the Atlanta Dream and when other WNBA players decided that they were going to support Reverend Raphael Warnock, the new senator from Georgia, he was polling at 9%. Nobody knew who he was. He had virtually no chance to win this Senate election. And what I appreciate about what these women did, it's a lot of things I appreciated, but to just unpack it layer by layer. One, they made the decision to not just go after any senator. They went after the person that writes their checks, an owner who's worth almost $1 billion, okay? Yes. And as you all know, the WNBA players do not make not even a quarter, not even a tenth, not even 0.001% of what most NBA players in their same position make. So they have a lot to lose. And they did it anyway. And they did it in such a focused, smart, strategic way that it's probably the biggest middle finger I've ever seen anybody in sports give to their boss. They didn't just go and support Reverend Raphael Warnock because he was Kelly Loeffler's opponent. They sat down with him. They talked to him. They saw that his agenda, his values, his principles stood in line with their own. That's why they supported him. The bonus was taking her down as well. And once, the bubble, it gave NBA players an opportunity to consistently, as you pointed out, use their platform to discuss these issues. I mean, I was very concerned that that the focus on these issues, them speaking up, would be lost once the game started because people would get so fixated on results. And of course, we were all in the mode where we wanted sports back so desperately that all that stuff would be forgotten. But I give them so much credit because every time you tried to talk to them about something that happened in the game or NBA issue, they would immediately pivot it to voter registration, Jacob Blake, racial injustice, police violence. They would pivot you right back to that area, so you had no choice. And so when these women decided to discuss his platform, Reverend Warnock's, nationally, wearing his T-shirts to games, trolling the hell out of a WNBA owner on national television, this elevated his campaign to a different level. Kelly Loeffler wanted attention when she decided that she was going to make some very racially polarizing false statements about the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, they gave her the attention she ordered, and it wasn't what she thought she would get. And so now that he's the first Black senator in Georgia, which is historic, but also trifling, the 11th Black senator overall, that is something that the power in that these women who often are not covered fairly or equally, who have to really fight for respect and media attention, were able to propel somebody to the U.S. Senate and thus help give Democrats control of the Senate. That's the most powerful thing I think that we've seen in sports in 2020. It was that. And so if that isn't proof to any athlete who wonders about whether or not their platform is powerful, who wonders whether or not they should get engaged and involved in issues that they care about that impact their community, impact their people, there's an example of what you can do. And I think now we're at a point, regardless of how the public feels about it, that the athletes have decided that they don't care anymore and they're not asking for permission. So you just gonna have to, along with accepting this entertainment, you're gonna have to accept them as full Black people in this country who have lived and experienced and who are ready to speak to a condition that is, suffered by their people. And that's just what it is.
In some ways, I feel like we're getting back to our roots, because Tommy Smith and Muhammad Ali did not care. They cared, but he told a whole country, I'm not going in this war. And I don't care what it does to me. And by the grace of God, he got everything back to him. Tristan, this country, sports, platforms, how do you feel about it?
Well, me being like an avid sports fan, I mean, you can ask my wife. I mean, from the moment that I wake up, all the sports shows are on my TV till the moment I go to sleep, and then I'm probably checking on my phone or on my iPad. So, for years, watching someone like Jemele Hill, who I would look at you as somebody that was unapologetic about what you felt and what you believed, and you used your platform to make that voice be heard, regardless of whatever repercussions that was going to come from it. But you knew what you believed in, and you stood on that. And I think and I know you say you take it humbly, you don't want to have that kind of credit, but you really, I think, gave that gate for social media, specifically for other reporters and other sports analysts, to be able to speak their mind on it, when the higher ups were saying, well, we just want to focus on sports. We just want to talk about the X's and O's. We just want to talk about the wins and losses. We just want to talk about the scores. Well, that's all we want to air. And I truly feel like you were one of the ones that pioneered to say, no, like, this is the reality of what's happening in our country. How do you expect us to focus on this one small, minute situation? Because at this point, compared to what's going on in society, this is a small thing, and just ignore everything else that's happening, especially to people that look like us, to be quite frank about it. So I think seeing what happened yesterday on television, like, I was so proud of the NBA for not canceling the game. And the reason why I say that is because I thought about it, because initially I was like, man, we shouldn't even have sports today. Look, we got to see what's going on. But when I thought about it, what was happening yesterday, if we fed it more attention than it needed, that would have done a disservice to everything that has been going on, everything that the Black Lives Matter movement has been doing for all of 2020. Because what they were doing will be classified as terrorism. Like, I even took the time to make sure I looked up the exact definition to understand what terrorism is. And they basically personified it yesterday of what terrorism looked like, what domestic terrorism looks like. And I think when they cancel games during the bubble, you cancel games because we had to make a stand to say, you only like us when we entertain you. But when our lives are on the line, that's not important. When our lives are taken, that's not important. So we're going to take away the thing that entertains you, so we can bring awareness to what's really happening to us. It's one of the impactful things when, I remember someone saying, God forbid, if it was LeBron James, the only reason why you would protect LeBron James is because of what he does as a basketball player. If he was a regular 6'8", 6'9" Black guy on the street, he'd probably be another name that's hashtagged as well. But because he has the platform that he has, because he is who he is, we look at him in a different light, and you all treat him in a different light. It's a very capitalistic society. So yesterday, by not canceling the games, what we said was, what you're doing in the Capitol right now, that's not how this is supposed to go. We're not going to give you more energy by canceling this to give you more shine on something that you're actually doing wrong. Now, what what they would have had a right to cancel the game on is when we found out the verdict of that officer in Wisconsin for Jacob Blake. Then if you're saying we cancel the game because of that, that has every right, because again, someone is getting off the hook. Someone is taking their privilege and took full advantage of it. And now we have another person that is not even dead. They're alive, but their whole entire life is altered because of someone's ignorance. And yet they're not getting any repercussions of it. So not only do we as society have to look at that and now swallow it, but now Jacob Blake himself has to live with that reality that someone that changed my life, that altered my life, because he's now paralyzed. So someone that altered my life to that extent is now going to walk around freely. They felt that that officer did nothing wrong, and he has to live with that. So those moments, yes, we have to cancel the games. Yes, we have to bring awareness to it. Yes, we have to talk about the injustice of it. But for domestic terrorism, no. You're mad because the president didn't win. Like, that's what you're upset about. It's not anything else happening.
Take the L, bro.
You're literally upset because this man took a big L and you're upset about it. And something that he actually may have coerced you in, because he tweeted long before saying January 6th, we're going to see some stuff. So it's mind-boggling to me of how that went about. And so I just appreciate the athletes. I appreciate the people like Jemele Hill that we all look up to that said, no, we're not just going to sit here and just not talk about this. We're not going to sit here and just allow this to be a thing that's on camera. No, I have the platform, I have the space, and I'm going to say what I got to say. And if you don't like it, tough. And that's really where we're at with it right now. We're really unapologetically going to say what we feel and stand by that.
Well, I'll just add one thing to your very thoughtful and well laid out comments. Is the reason why it wouldn't have made any sense for the NBA, or the other reason I should say, for the NBA to cancel any games, even though I know some thought bubble kind of came up from nowhere, is because what we saw on the Capitol was very much, and this is politically incorrect, that was white folks' business. That ain't had nothing to do with us. And yep. The truth of the matter is, the only people shocked by the behavior of those white people are other white people. Black people been new. Okay, right? We already know what the deal is. Okay, so there was no reason for us to go and have this moment while we may have thought it was surreal. While all of us would be like, damn, I can't believe that actually happened. We all had that moment, but none of that was surprising. Not the entitlement, not the privilege, not the violence, not the Capitol Police essentially giving them a tour of the Capitol as they destroy things. None of that surprised anybody Black, nobody. And so at this point, we need other white people to understand the depths in which some of their people will go to protect whiteness, because this is in response to the fact that they have lost control. They don't have the president, they don't have the Senate, and they don't have the House of Representatives. And by they, I mean that faction of people who support Trump and who support generally a party that overall has now become a mirror reflection of who he is. And you can take that for what it is. So with that, all that being said, what would we have to protest and call off games for? For what? It's like they have to deal with that, with what they created. Their Frankenstein led to people getting hurt and killed. Deal with your Frankenstein. So that wasn't on Black people.
Yeah. I always say, I want to say one thing, Mikkel, in this regard.
Okay.
I always say this to people because I sometimes when it's slow at work, I got time on social media, say what I gotta say. People like to refuse. I got time. So I'll sit there and I'll make my response. One thing I constantly say to those that say, well, this isn't America, this isn't the American way when these things happen. I always tell people, say, this is the one thing I'll always thank Trump for. The greatest thing that he did in his tenure as president is expose America for what it actually is. It took the mask off of what this has been, what Black people have been saying for years, that this is what it is. When everybody's saying, oh, racism doesn't exist, oh, social injustice doesn't exist, we're all kumbaya. No, what he did was fully expose and unmask the real look of this so-called America that we live in. Because that's all it is. It's nothing, just like Jemele said, Nothing new took place. I didn't sit there shocked yesterday. I didn't sit there surprised at all. I was just like, okay, what did you expect? You seeing police officers taking selfies with the so-called protesters that are coming into the Capitol. This is nothing that's new or shocking. It's been like this for years. So all the one thing that Trump has done in his presidency is fully expose America for what it actually is. And now basically everybody else is playing catch up, and all the black people are like, we tried to tell y'all. We tried to tell y'all.
Well, one, I want my $1,400. That's me. All this, just open the door for my extra amount of stimulus, because I need that. $5 extra dollars can help a friend in need. I am that friend. Two, I'm also not surprised, because how many years have y'all been watching The Simpsons? They giving us this.
Giving us gems.
Time we turn,
gems.
they're giving us this. And
Gems.
three, I don't know if this, and three, you guys weighing on this, in the insensitiveness, that's not a word, but the insensitivity of the NFL, we're not changing the game on Saturday without any prior statements, and we all know what they're about. What's in a kneel? Whoo!
Well, I mean,
shown that.
I mean, the NFL.
We're not surprised about them neither.
No. I mean, I was about to say, let's be real about this. I mean, as much as I love watching football, I mean, we have to acknowledge what it is. I mean, these guys literally, the Super Bowl literally has to be a national holiday. Like really, like everyone should have off and everything. Like that's how powerful an entity the NFL is.
You mean the day after? You mean the Monday after?
Day after. Yeah, you gotta recover. Yeah,
I'm with you.
So, like, there's no way that they're going to make that stance, because I promise you, especially when I saw you tweeting, Mikhail, I promise you, their first thought was, well, this is happening now. Let's let this die down between Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday we'll have our playoffs. They're not going to stop. They're not stopping it. If they wouldn't let COVID, do you see how many people on the Cleveland Browns got test positive for COVID? And they're still going to have them play. They're still going to have them play. They're not letting anything stop them from their dollar, because they know we're going to watch. They know we're going to watch. So they're not going to allow anything to take place in that regard. I mean, look how they did with, for example, look how they did with Kaepernick. Look how that went about. Nothing is going to break them. They might do little things here and there to say, oh, we care, or we adjust, but they're not going to completely fold on it. I say it all the time. I was like, the best thing that could have happened for the NFL was they got a Patrick Mahomes. Because when you put Patrick, and I'm going to say it real, I'm going to be 100 about it. When you put Patrick Mahomes on the screen, it looks a lot different than if you put Lamar Jackson on the screen. It looks a lot different if you put Deshaun Watson on the screen. It looks a lot different. It just looks, it's like, ooh, we're giving them their platform, but in a safe bubble, because it's Patrick Mahomes. It's a safe bubble. That's all it is. But you could put Deshaun Watson in that front and he can express the same thoughts. Lamar Jackson can express the same thoughts, but they won't dare try it, because that's too extreme for them. That we're not going to go that far. So they're always going to bend, but they're not going to break, and they're not going to let anything break for them. And as long as those owners are who they are, as long as we still have a shortage of African-American GMs to have controls of these franchises, as long as we have the shortage of African-American owners, not any of them, like as long as we have these struggles, this is always going to be a power push for the NFL. As long as as I call them, the good old boys stay up there, it's always going to be a power struggle for the NFL.
We got to overtake the NFL too. We got to talk about your other people real quick, Jemele. Our first Black vice president is Kamala Harris. We all know. Stacey Abrams, basically what she did down in Georgia, basically everything stripped from her. And she said, okay, I'm going to change something real quick, and I'm going to get y'all to come behind me. The leading ladies, we talk about the WNBA, the Dream, the insertion of them in the senatorial election and how it meant. This is a man's world, but it's nothing without a woman's heart. It has not always been the best two women in this country. Specifically, also us with these faces, Tristan, you have an African American wife. You will soon be raising an African American daughter in this country. Shout out to the baby bump. Right on. Jemele, how does that feel to see women continuing to evolve as leaders and asserters? Specifically, what does that mean as far as the process when it comes to our Black faces?
Well, I mean, I think not just 2020, but maybe these last few years have been really important to Black women. A lot of the things people have seen Black women do are things they've always done. It's things we have always done. But the problem is that we were becoming invisible mules in this country. And what I really appreciate about somebody like Stacey Abrams and about Kamala Harris and about the women in the WNBA is that they don't apologize for their success and they don't apologize for seizing their power. And Stacey Abrams, to me, is such a inspiring example of not only some of the obstacles that Black women face and ultimately through perseverance and a whole lot of other things can overcome. But when you think about it, and she's a great testament, I think, to those of us who professionally aspire to things, because her testimony is really unbelievable. I mean, think about this. She had an election essentially stolen from her in 2018. Yes. She lost by 55,000 votes. It comes out later, and we knew the case then, that there were hundreds of thousands of Georgians who were mysteriously kicked off the voter roll. She should have won that election. The guy she ran against, Brian Kemp, who became the governor, was also the Secretary of State, overseeing his own election that he was in. Y'all can read that as y'all will. She loses that, and there was a lot of different ways that Stacey Abrams could have gone. She could have gone to the private sector, because by that time she had become a name because of how she lost. She could have gone into another area in politics. But what she chose to do, and she had been already laying the groundwork with this because she saw up close the voter suppression issues in Georgia. In 2020, she registered 800,000 voters. She started Fair Fight and decided, you know what? I'm going to change the dynamic and the landscape of voting in Georgia. Because what beats suppression is turnout. And she knew that. And so she played the long game, and she may reap some of the biggest rewards. And this administration that's about to take office owes her an incredible debt, because nobody ever thought Georgia could be blue. When I did a podcast with her last year, and she said, 8-9 years ago, they were telling her Georgia would never be blue. And she said, you know what? I think y'all got this wrong. And she went to strategizing and organizing, because as we have seen during this administration that's on its way out, how many profiles and stories have we read about white voters and their grievances? And we read about them during Obama's years, and then we read about them during Trump years, about how forgotten and overlooked they are. Ain't nobody more overlooked than Black people. Nobody. All right. And so Stacey Abrams knew this, and she was able, through organizing, through just an incredible smart way to attack this problem. She knew that if she was able to inspire Black people of all ages to vote, that they could win because of the demographics in Georgia. So not only has she delivered Georgia to President-elect Biden, she has now helped to deliver the Senate majority. And I feel it in my gut. If you ask me to place a paycheck on it, I would. In 2022, she will be governor of Georgia. She will be the first Black woman governor in this country, because I don't see how she loses having done all of that. Stacey Abrams has become one of the most important political figures. And it's important that we remember it started from a crippling loss. This is what she did after a loss. Because as we've often heard the old adage, or some form of this adage, it's not what you do when you're successful that defines you. It's what you do when you have lost that defines you. It's what you do when you're in your worst moment that defines you. And in a moment that would have been too crushing for other people, she was at her best, which leads me to believe that she has easily the makings to someday be president. Because if she gets in the governor's office in 2022, I think Stacey Abrams will eventually be president of the United States.
This is the part where we get cheesy as we start to end this show, because it's going to get real cliche. You know, we're a sports show. So, you know, we got to talk sports, and you're sitting here. So we got to ask you the sports questions. Wild card Saturday and Sunday. The Colts and the Bills started off at 1 p.m. The Rams and the Seahawks take it from there. The Washington football team takes on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is the first time I'm not afraid of seeing Tom Brady anywhere. I'm sorry. I hope Chase Young has them tap dancing back there. I hope that front line gets them. Alex Smith, check me down all you want, baby. Just control the offense. I don't care. It's been a long time coming seeing the Buccaneers and the team formerly known as the Redskins. Tristan, you know, because they used to get us out the first round. The last time we saw them, the whole Buccaneers was black instead of Allstott and Barrett Johnson. So I'm hoping we take this W, because we're fearful. Nobody knows anything of what we expected. Shout out to my mama sauce eating brother of myself, Chase Young, get it done. Anyways, Sunday, the Baltimore Ravens and the Titans. Hopefully, Derrick Henry's not running up on them like Megatron again. Shout out to Calais Campbell. That's what we paid you this money to come and do. But anyways, Baltimore Ravens, Titans, they started off at 105. Chicago Bears, New Orleans Saints, Cleveland Browns, they rock. They're in the playoffs. And they face the Steelers. Jemele, any matchups you like? Of course, I didn't bring up the Lions in this whole thing. I'm not trying.
Bring them up. I'm not. I know I'm from Detroit. I'm not a Lions fan, so it's
okay. Great.
It's okay.
You see that 49ers helmet? You see that 49ers helmet?
I see that 49ers helmet back there. I just want to make sure I don't bring you down.
We don't have a whole lot to brag about this year either, but I think we'll be back next year. We'll be back next year with a healthy starting quarterback, hopefully. Mm-hmm.
The injury bug just hit y'all at the wrong damn time.
Really?
It was just like, what happened? But any matchups, and can we get your Super Bowl prediction? Do you have one?
Well, you know, it is going to be great to have so many wild card games to watch on both days. I mean, I'll be honest, like the game I'm probably most looking forward to is probably Baltimore, Tennessee. And maybe 1A, and I'm not just saying this because y'all in the DMV, but 1A would probably be Tampa Bay and the Washington football team, mostly because, you know, even though I went to Michigan State and Tom Brady went to Michigan, and I wish nothing but pestilence on Michigan. I have respected I have a tremendous amount of respect for his career, and I just think he has. This was always a silly narrative to me to begin with, when people try to overly credit Bill Belichick with his success as a quarterback. I'm not saying Bill Belichick was not a central figure in his success. Of course he was. But I think there was always the narrative on Brady's career that he wasn't self-made. He faced that a lot before he got Randy Moss. When we had those arguments about him and Peyton Manning, it was, well, Peyton Manning's the passer. Brady's just the manager, the game manager. And then after, you see offensively how getting a dynamic weapon like Randy Moss completely changed how Tom Brady's career was viewed. And after that, you know, we see some of the gaudy statistical numbers that he's been able to put up. But I think this year, for him to be 40 years old and to bring the Bucs to their first, you know, playoffs in 13 years, I mean, that's just a hell of a story. And I'm sort of rooting for him because, you know, Belichick got a lot of credit for what he did, but Belichick's at home right now and he's in the playoffs. So, you know, I think in many ways, this season kind of exonerated him a little bit, even though he should have nothing to prove, given that, you know, he's obviously a lock as a Hall of Famer. Baltimore, Tennessee, I think this is going to be a slugfest. You know, like a lot of people, you know, I think Lamar Jackson is an amazing talent. And he so much reminds me of some of the old, outdated, and frankly, very, you know, very kind of moronic sports arguments that we would have about Black quarterbacks. This constant argument and debate about what kind of passer Lamar Jackson is just really astounding to me. Right. You know, I'm glad he came along in the time that he did, because if Lamar Jackson comes along maybe 20 years ago, they might have told him to switch to safety, and I'm not kidding, or wide receiver or something else. Absolutely. Right? They might have given him the Antoine Randall treatment, even though it was very obvious the kind of ability that he had when he was in college. But you know, so it's hard for me not to root for somebody like him, knowing what the narratives are. I love Derrick Henry. I think if there was, if there was a non-quarterback poised to win MVP, it would be him, for sure. But it's just, I don't, it's just too much momentum behind Aaron Rodgers or, Patrick Mahomes perhaps. But no, I mean, I think that matchup is going to be, really incredible. I can name a number of reasons why I'm looking forward to all the games, but those are the two that I probably have circled the most. And I think Tampa Bay will win it, and I also think Baltimore will. Now, in terms of my Super Bowl pick, this is tough, but like, it's actually not that tough. I just don't see anybody beating Kansas City. I just don't. I mean, they have one of the more dynamic offenses that I think we've seen. They were, even though it's not the same, but the fear factor of the offense is the same. They remind me so much of The Greatest Show on Turf, of that Rams team with Kurt Warner and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce, because it's one thing if you're a prolific offense. It's another thing if you're an offense that inspires fear in everybody else. And that is an offense that keeps people up at night if you're a defensive coordinator on the other side. And I just think it's really hard to match up with them. And I don't see how they don't repeat. It pains my heart to say it, because as far as I'm concerned, we gave them that Super Bowl last year when we magically decided to stop running the ball.
Yes.
With Kyle Shanahan, stop me if you've seen that before. Hello, Atlanta, 28-3.
Exactly.
So, so it was painful to watch, but I do think, even though this has been a bit of a complicated season with the pandemic, that Kansas City offensively, as scary as it sounds, is even better than they were last year. So I think they'll repeat. As for their, NFC opponent, I really, really like the Packers. And I think that'd be a Super Bowl, particularly from an offensive standpoint. I think all of us can kind of get behind that Kansas City versus Green Bay.
Oh, I mean, why wouldn't you want two of the better throwers of the football in one game to decide who's going to be the champion? I mean, you can't ask for better than that. Now, I do want to ask you this question in regards to your 49ers, because I kept staring at that helmet behind you. Now, I have a frat brother of mine. His name's Eric. Now, he's a huge 49ers fan, and he goes all the way back to days of the catch and everything. Like, he's a big 49ers
Which,
fan.
by the way, that helmet, what's on top of it is the catch. It's the play design, and it's signed by Dwight Clark and Joe Montana. Just so you know.
Well, that's because you're Jemele Hill. Why wouldn't you have something like that? Of course, But looking at the team this year, I think anyone that is a real watcher of football, real watcher of the NFL, can clearly see, like, injuries was the reason you guys had the issues that you had. Like, clearly, it wasn't bereft of talent or anything like that. Clearly, it was an injury problem. Now, let me ask you this question, though, because you hear the NFL rumors around. There's always little rumors here and there. Let me ask you this question. As a fan, are you a believer in Jimmy G as your starting quarterback going forward?
I believe in his ability for sure. The problem is, do I believe in his health? And that's the thing that's, I think, most concerning, is that he just hasn't stayed on the field enough. Luckily, he's got a very cap-friendly contract. And so, this next year is going to be a big year to see which direction that we could go. But what I like about how our team is built is the fact that we have a lot of speed, a lot of young talent. And if there was a scenario in which, we had to, unfortunately, part ways with Jimmy Garoppolo, I think we could withstand it and plug somebody in and still be successful. Sometimes there are teams that are so dependent on their quarterback that if, everybody needs a good quarterback in the NFL. So I hope people understand what I'm saying, is that the team is set up to win now. And so if we had to, for some reason, go get another quarterback, then I think we could do that and still be able to compete for a few years to come. It's interesting we're having this conversation because, as I'm sure you all know, kind of all day today and even part of yesterday, it got swallowed up in this other news that we've been discussing on the political side. But there's a lot of very interesting rumors around Deshaun Watson. And there's a part of me, because he's so good,
So
and
good.
hopes he does want to trade. He's so good because the way the Texans have so far proven how they can't build around him, I
Yes.
would hate to see somebody that talented who has MVP level ability waste his prime careers with a team that just doesn't have the leadership to build around him. If I'm the 49ers, I'm kicking all sorts of tires on Deshaun Watson just to see.
Yes.
Could be. It's kind of like when I'm a married woman, so I don't get this as much anymore. But when I was single, or even if I was single, as in from a government standpoint, single, but I might be in a relationship with somebody, and you out somewhere and a guy will approach and you're just like, oh, I'm in a relationship. He was like, but can you have a friend? I think the 49ers need to see if the
Yes.
Texans need a friend.
That's right. That's right.
Because be like, yeah, I know you committed. Yeah, I know that's the
Right.
guy. But who says you can't have friends?
That's right.
So
That's right.
if I'm them, I'm just kicking the tires. I'm just seeing what's up because if the rumors are to be believed, Deshaun Watson has every right to be upset with who they picked as general manager.
I want to
I'm
ask
back.
this question. I got you, Mikhail. I got you.
I'm
I just want to
back.
ask you. I want to ask this quick question before I toss it over to you in regards to, of course, about we all heard about it earlier this year. Well, early this year is still early, but in regards to 2020, in regards to the modifications that they made to the Rooney Rule, where there's incentives if teams interview coaches or ultimately hire African American or minority head coaches, getting extra picks, things of that nature, which I really think is a slap in the face to all minority coaches and African American coaches. We shouldn't have to go, through these links, but the name that has been swirling around for the past couple of years. Do you think that this offseason will be the time that we finally see Eric Bieniemy get a shot at a head coaching position?
I think so. I mean, because I do think. Well, I'll put it this way. I'll think about this in the negative. If Eric Bieniemy doesn't get a job this year, and I think, and you guys probably will remember this. I remember when this was the case with Marvin Lewis, because it was the first couple cycles when he was defensive coordinator with the Ravens. He didn't get a job, and he was that guy where people saw the historic defense the Ravens had, and he was obviously, a great coach, but he was passed over a few times, before he actually got an opportunity with the Bengals. And if that happens again to Eric Bieniemy, then all it does is further expose what we know is the truth. Is these NFL owners and NFL leadership in general, they have clearly some issues with systemic racism in the league. The lack of Black general managers is not because there is a lack of qualified candidates, a lack of people they can elevate. It's simply because they don't want to. And, I used to be of the mind frame, whether it be the NFL or any other sports leagues, or even in our business, which has a severe problem when it comes to inclusion and diversity, is that, I used to think it was less intentional, but now I know it is intentional, because it's not like they don't know this is a problem.
Exactly.
The reality is that they do what we often see happen in corporate America, is that when the two people or three people or the person across from the candidate looks the same, they tend to give them a benefit of doubt and a belief that we just don't get, because they can't relate to us. And be it skin color or be it perceptions and stereotypes that they have about who we are, and they keep moving the goalposts in the NFL. If we've seen in these last few hiring cycles, the hot commodity are offensive coaches, right? Eric Bieniemy is piloting the hottest offense in the NFL. He's got arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. That was the recipe that they established. So he meets the criteria. And if he doesn't get another job, or if he doesn't get a head coaching job, then you already know what it is. It's like there can't be any other excuse, because he's checked all the boxes that you say are the qualifications. Mm-hmm. And even Marvin Lewis, who I see every year, there's a name, a Black coach that just keeps interviewing. It was Dennis Green for a few years. That was the dude. Oh, we got to fill the Rooney Rule. Let's call Marvin Lewis. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason that he's getting looks, But if Marvin Lewis were a white coach, he would have a job because white coaches tend to get recycled. I mean, the fact that Jason Garrett's name even popped up as a possible head coach, what's the difference?
Blew my mind.
Right. I was like, and he's a far more, he underachieved big time compared to Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis had, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, Adam Gase, Ryan Tannehill is an indictment. He can't coach. I mean, it's like, that's the indictment. He was right under him. And Ryan Tannehill looked like trash under Adam Gase.
Yes.
Look at the Jets. They are a complete disaster, right?
Yes.
But I bet you this guy gets another job. I bet you it happens, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so it's it just boggles the mind. And it's very frustrating to watch as, a Black person in this country, because we all can relate to that experience where as soon as we think we have what they say they're looking for, then they're looking for something else.
Yes.
And so then it keeps shape shifting. And so that's the frustration that I see, when looking at not just Eric Bieniemy. You got Robert Salah, who could be the first Arab American, coach who's from, my home state in Michigan. It's like, what he did, you want to know if Robert Salah can coach, go and look at that victory that we just had over, was it the Cardinals? I mean, that was a coaching, it was a coaching display that he put on there. So I'm just tired of there just being this unfair expectation and qualifications that are put on Black coaches and minority coaches in general. We don't get the same opportunities. We aren't viewed the same. Our leadership isn't respected the same. And the NFL is just unfortunately a microcosm of what happens to us in the working world.
Absolutely.
I would like to say, one, modern technology just screwed the hell out of me, because in this moving situation that I'm in, because I just moved, I have to use my radiator as my desk, and guess whose temperature was too high? So that cut me off. So now I'm back. But I'm glad, thank God for Tristan, you guys had that conversation. Only two things I wanted to piggyback off of, and then we have to purely let you go. That pick and plug thing with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick all those years, and they're saying, well, who made who? And now we got the answer. We're seeing in a fan base up in New England that, one, they're very spoiled. And two, Bill Belichick is set in his ways, because you have Cam Newton, and it's going to be Cam Newton's fault. Even if he got COVID and everything else, you have not developed an offensive scheme around this man. And we're going to have that same problem. You say it all the time, Tristan, in Baltimore. If we don't figure out a way to figure out what to do with Lamar Jackson, that's different from what these defenses have already seen. Yep. And then next thing you're going to hear this conversation, oh, Lamar Jackson has plateaued, and he hasn't plateaued. He hasn't been able to give you guys something different from the more advanced we already have. And then when we're talking about Black coaches in NFL, even if Eric Bieniemy gets in there and he gets that head coaching job, that first year on the chopping block is scarce for him, because if he does not do what everybody thinks he's supposed to do, it's we told you so. And then unfortunately, it's get back in the back and do what we want to do. It's so unfortunate to get the opportunity, and then you get it, and then you don't get. How long? We talk about Jason Garrett. How long did this guy have for the Cowboys to continuously mess up?
Yeah, I mean, and he had Tony Romo. It's not like he didn't have a good quarterback.
Thank you.
He had a great quarterback, and then he had Dak Prescott, who stepped in and capably took over the mantle from Romo. I mean, and real quick, and I want you to get back to your thought. What I do like about this hiring cycle, looking at the jobs available, is so much is. The coaching is about ability, but it's also about situation. And I don't want to see Eric Bieniemy go to the Jets, or what I'm saying. The best job out there is, I think, it's probably the Jaguars. When you look at the cap space they have available, they got the number one pick. There's a lot of great parts that are there. Houston, you got Deshaun Watson. I just hope he's able to go somewhere where there's an established franchise quarterback, or he gets to pick his own guy. One of those situations, which is why, I hope, because we see it happen too often. I mean, generally, if you have a coaching opening, you're not a good team, okay? But too many times we have seen Black coaches get the worst of the worst jobs. And as you said, Mikhail, what happens is that it winds up, if they can't turn these impossible situations around, then it winds up being an indictment on them as a coach and permanently stains them. And then they don't get another job. Because we, in many cases, might be one and done, one shot and we done. And so we have to be very intentional about the situations that we pick.
I think in general, when we talk about the Black race, and David Aldridge, DA tells me all the time, you only get one shot because they're waiting for you to mess up. And if you mess up a name, spell it wrong, you have to try to get it right as much as possible, because we are not going to continue to get those continuing chances. When we look at sports, and we specifically look at sports, we look at it as a lot of our athletes and our faces, our primes are being taken away from us before we're able to reach our full potential. We talk about the Cowboys. I feel like Jerry Jones took Dez's prime totally away from him and then discarded him like he was nothing. And it's great to see him back in this league. Dak Prescott couldn't get the contract he wanted to get. And look, they are nothing without his leadership and what he does in that locker room.
Mike that Tomlin. Blank check, Jerry. Blank check.
Yes. And if anybody should have wanted Eric Bieniemy, it should have been the Dallas Cowboys for what the offense they were supposed to have on paper. You can't do nothing with the same guys you had signed for so many years. But anyways, Amari Cooper, your days are numbered, my good man. But anyways, when we're looking at, for so many years, Mike Tomlin, look what he was able to do. We find out Antonio Brown's antics later. Le'Veon Bell had to leave, and look what he's had to do with the Jets just to get respected, to get the money he got. And they said Mike Tomlin wasn't a good coach. But look what he did with all that circus going on behind him. We did not know. The respect that needs to be given, that is not given, that we're making choices and doing everything behind the scenes, and we only had one shot. It's starting to become other things that we have to continue to change the narrative on. And hopefully in, I don't know how many more decades we're going to need, but hopefully
it changes.
Hopefully in more time. Thank God for people like Andy Reid, because I always tell people, I always tell people, Michael Vick should be thanking God and Andy Reid, because there's people that still hate him to this day. And Andy Reid took the shot on talent versus controversy. And these are the type of things that we need. I missed a lot, but I'm glad. I'm glad this was taken care of. Jemele, you stood the test of time with us. We appreciate you. I know it's the West Coast, so you still got time. We about to try to go to bed or something over here on the East Coast.
I got dinner I need to go make now.
I went to LA one time. I swear I managed to go do a tour of Fox Sports 1, go watch the wild card game, and go to the club by 11 o'clock. It was crazy.
No, that's the beauty of being on the West Coast. Like these early games, I was living like a barbarian before on the East Coast, but like you still have your entire night free despite watching sports all day. Like I can't tell you what a winning combination that is.
Unless the people have been living under a rock, and unless you don't want the free publicity. Tell people where they can find you. Please tell people where they can find you.
Oh, of course. So you mentioned the podcast, Jemele Hill is Unbothered, which is available on Spotify, which you can download or subscribe to for free. I co-host the show called Carrie and Jemele Won't Stick to Sports, which is coming on in a couple hours. It's on at 11 p.m. on Vice TV. In addition to that, I also write for The Atlantic. On social media, I'm the same at Jemele Hill. So yeah, people can find me. I'm out here in these streets.
And next time you come on this show, which we really hope is the next time, you're no longer a guest. So I'm not going in the kitchen and getting you nothing to drink. You know where it is.
I got you. You know what? I'm gonna go right in the refrigerator because I ain't a guest.
Make a sandwich, ham, cheese. I got it all in here, baby. We would like to thank you for your time.
Yes.
It's remarkable. Thank you for answering the call as always. And hopefully, God willing, in Houston, I get a chance to, with my mask on. And hand sanitizer in my realm, everywhere we go. I do hope I get a chance to touch you, hug you, embrace you. I'm always appreciative of you.
Oh, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys, and good luck with everything. And keep up the good work on the show. Appreciate you.
You too. And I'm going to say it like I say it every week. And I don't care if it does not rhyme. It's still mine. Did you give your predictions?
I know. She gave the prediction. She said Kansas City and the Packers for the Super Bowl.
And you?
I'm the same.
Can we hold on? Me and you can hold on.
I might adjust it, but my early on, that's what I want. That's what I want to see. But I might adjust it.
And I'm gonna say, like I said in the weekend, I don't care if it does not rhyme, it is still mine. I'm Mikkel, like Kevin McKell. That was episode 106, people. We will see you next week for 7. Peace out.
Peace.